It was a freezing winter morning, snowflakes gently falling like forgotten prayers, when a single mom spotted two twin boys sitting alone on a cold metal bench. Their lips were blue, their fingers red with frostbite, and yet they sat silently, as if they'd already accepted being invisible. Something inside her broke, and she whispered, "Come with me." If this moment moved you even a little, please like, comment, and subscribe, because sometimes the smallest gesture melts even the coldest fates. The city was blanketed in white. Snow crunched under boots, breath turned to mist, and buildings stood quiet in the early morning stillness. People hurried past the bus stop, bundled in thick scarves and wool coats, focused only on reaching their destinations. Ava, a single mom juggling two jobs in a world of worries, paused at a bench, tugging her oversized coat tighter around her. She didn't expect to notice anything, but then she saw them. Two small boys sat side by side on the icy bench. No gloves, no hats, no coats thick enough to fight the cold. Their knees touched, not out of comfort, but out of sheer need for warmth. One had a tear frozen to his cheek. They weren't crying. They weren't talking. They were just existing, alone, in silence. Ava's heart dropped. She looked around, expecting to see a parent nearby, but there was no one, just the hush of snowfall and the distant hum of a passing bus. She stepped forward cautiously. "Hi, sweethearts," she said softly, kneeling so her eyes met theirs. "Where's your mom or dad?" No answer, just the way the older boy looked at her, guarded, like he'd learned not to trust too easily. The younger one shivered violently, but clung to his brother. Ava hesitated for a moment, her instincts warring with the unknown. But then she took off her scarf, wrapping it gently around their shoulders. "You can come with me," she whispered, "just for a little while until we figure things out." She held out her hand. The boys didn't speak, but they stood. That was answer enough. And in that frozen moment, Ava didn't know it, but she had just opened the door to something far bigger than she could imagine. Sometimes love doesn't bloom in loud declarations. It grows quietly, like sunlight sneaking through cracks and broken walls. In the days that followed, Ava didn't ask the boys many questions. She gave them warmth, food, and space to breathe. And in return, something beautiful began to bloom between three hearts that had long been starving for care. The apartment wasn't much, just a tiny two-bedroom with peeling paint and creaky floors. But to Jude and Liam, it might as well have been a palace. Ava had carried them in that morning, both half-frozen and exhausted. She didn't press them for answers. She simply laid out dry clothes, ran warm baths, and made oatmeal with extra cinnamon. The first night, they didn't speak. They slept curled together on the living room couch on the same thick quilt, while Ava dozed nearby in an armchair, pretending to read a book. The second morning, Liam followed Ava into the kitchen and silently handed her an empty bowl, his way of saying thank you. The third evening, Jude placed one of Ava's worn slippers neatly by her bed, unprompted. These were small things, quiet things, but Ava noticed them all. She learned that Liam liked to trace patterns on the frosted window with his finger, and that Jude flinched at the sound of sirens. She saw how both boys froze whenever someone knocked on the door, as if expecting to be taken away again, so she stopped locking the door in front of them. Instead, she said, "This is your home too. No one's coming to take you from here." They still didn't speak, but something shifted in the air. By the end of the week, Liam laughed, just once, when Ava accidentally burned the toast and dropped on the floor with a dramatic gasp. It was a sound so bright and sudden, it startled everyone, even Jude. Ava smiled through tears she didn't let fall. Later that night, she placed a small mattress beside her own bed, just in case either of them needed her. Around 3 a.m., she felt a tiny hand reach up and touch hers in the dark. "Stay," Jude whispered. It was the first word she'd heard from either of them. She held his hand and whispered back, "I'm not going anywhere." In that fragile silence, trust began to form, not all at once, but in pieces, stitched gently into place with every meal, every gentle word, every time Ava chose patience over pressure. She still didn't know their full story, but she knew this. Some families are born, others are built with time, warmth, and a little courage. Truth doesn't always knock loudly. It slips in through quiet moments, unguarded glances, and things left unsaid. One question, one slip of the tongue, or one forgotten item can unravel everything. And when Ava found the small, tattered photo tucked inside Liam's sock, the silence she protected began to speak. It was laundry day, a chore Ava never used to mind. But now, folding 2 extra pairs of tiny clothes filled her with a strange kind of comfort. Proof that they were here, that she wasn't alone. She reached into Liam's laundry pile and paused when her fingers brushed something stiff. A photo, small, water-stained, torn around the edges. She unfolded it gently and saw 3 faces. A woman, maybe in her early 20s, smiling wide with both arms wrapped around 2 familiar-looking boys. They were younger in the photo, cheeks rounder, eyes brighter, but they were definitely Jude and Liam. Ava's chest tightened. The woman in the picture was their mother. She heard soft footsteps behind her and quickly turned. Liam stood in the doorway, frozen. His eyes went straight to the photo in her hands. A wave of guilt flashed across his face, but he didn't run. "I didn't mean to snoop," Ava said softly, kneeling. "She looks kind. Is that your mom?" Liam didn't answer, but his lower lip trembled. Then finally he whispered, "She's gone." Ava's heart sank. "I'm so sorry," she said. "Do you know where she went?" He nodded slowly, then shook his head, as if trying to undo the truth he'd just acknowledged. Jude appeared behind him, holding a stuffed fox Ava had bought from the thrift store. He clutched it tightly, eyes darting between Liam and Ava. "She didn't want to go," Jude whispered. It was the second sentence he'd ever spoken in front of her. "She tried to hide us," Liam added, stepping forward now. "But he found her." Ava's breath caught. Who found her? They didn't answer, but their silence screamed. Ava sat with them on the floor, one arm around each boy, waiting in case more words came. They didn't. Not yet. But she could feel it now. There was something dark behind their silence. Something they'd run from. Something that might still be chasing them. That night, as the boys slept tangled together on their shared mattress, Ava stayed awake on the couch, staring at the ceiling. Who was he? Where had the boys come from? And was someone out there still looking for them? She didn't have answers. But as she looked at the photo again, at the love shining in that young mother's eyes, Ava made a quiet promise. Whatever these boys had survived, they wouldn't have to survive it alone anymore. Peace is a fragile thing. It doesn't break with noise, but with a knock on the door at the wrong hour, a stranger's stare that lingers too long, or a name said out loud that should have stayed buried. For Ava, it all started with a phone call and the moment she realized someone was watching them. It started as a normal afternoon. Ava had just returned from the grocery store with extra snacks the boys liked. Chocolate pudding for Liam, plain crackers for Jude. They were coloring on the kitchen floor, soft music playing from the radio, everything feeling right. Then her phone rang. Ava almost didn't answer. Unknown number. But something told her to. "Is this Ava Morgan?" a woman's voice asked. "Yes, who's calling?" "I'm with Child Protective Services. We received a report concerning 2 minor boys in your care, Liam and Jude. We'd like to ask you a few questions." Ava's blood ran cold. I didn't do anything wrong," she said quickly. "They were alone, at a bus stop. No one came for them. I didn't plan to." "We're not accusing you of wrongdoing, Ms. Morgan," the voice said calmly. "But we need to verify their safety and legal custody. We'll be visiting your home tomorrow morning." As the call ended, Ava stood frozen in the kitchen, heart pounding. The boys looked up from their coloring. Liam tilted his head. "Who was it?" "Just someone checking in," Ava said with a forced smile. "Everything's okay." But it wasn't. Not really. That night, after the boys fell asleep, Ava sat staring at the front door. Every creak in the hallway felt louder. Every shadow outside seemed to shift. She knew she couldn't lose them. But what could she do? The next morning came too fast. At 9 a.m. sharp, there was a knock. 2 CPS agents, one young and kind-eyed, the other cold and businesslike, stood at her door. They flashed badges, asked polite but firm questions. took photos of the apartment, measured the boys' weight, and checked their clothes for bruises. Everything felt like a test she hadn't studied for. Then the cold-eyed one asked, "Do you know who their legal guardian is?" Ava hesitated. "No," she admitted. "They never said, just that their mom's gone, and someone dangerous might be looking for them." The agent's pen stopped mid-scratch. "What do you mean by dangerous?" Ava's throat tightened. I don't know, but they're scared. All the time. They flinch when they hear knocks. They never ask for anything. They barely talk. That's not normal." The younger agent nodded slowly, visibly moved. But the other one frowned. "Until we can verify their background, the boys may need to be placed in temporary state care." Ava's heart dropped. "No," she said. "You can't. They finally feel safe here. Please." "We'll review everything and be in touch within 24 hours, the older agent said. As they left, Ava locked the door and slid down to the floor, her back pressed against it. For the first time since taking the boys in, she felt like she might lose them. Sometimes it's not the world outside that breaks you. It's the quiet voice in your own mind whispering, "What if you're not enough?" As CPS loomed closer and the boys clung tighter, Ava began to wonder if love alone could really save them, or she'd only delayed the heartbreak that was destined to come. The apartment, once a place of gentle routine and quiet joy, now felt like it held its breath. Ava couldn't focus. She burned the toast. She poured juice into cereal. Her eyes darted to the clock every 5 minutes, waiting for a call, hoping it wouldn't come, dreading that it would. The boys noticed. Liam sat quietly on the couch, hugging his knees, watching her with eyes that didn't ask, but understood. Jude had started carrying the stuffed fox again, even to the bathroom. A silent sign of regression Ava had learned to read. Fear was back. Ava tried to hide her unease, tried to keep their routine normal. She still read bedtime stories, still knelt beside them every night, kissed their foreheads, and whispered, "You're safe." But her voice cracked more each time. One night, after she thought they were asleep, she went out on the fire escape to get fresh air. Snow had fallen again. The city glowed in soft amber, and her breath puffed into the cold. She covered her face and wept. "Maybe I was wrong," she whispered to herself. "Maybe I should have called someone that first day. Maybe I made it worse." Her phone buzzed. It was a message from her sister. "You okay? I saw a CPS car on your street. Want me to call someone?" Ava stared at the screen, unsure how to respond. What would she even say? That she fell in love with 2 broken boys who barely spoke, and now she was terrified of losing them? That she'd begun to feel more like a mother in 3 weeks than she had her whole life? Behind her, the fire escape window creaked open. Liam peeked out, shivering in a blanket. "I heard you crying," he said softly. Ava turned quickly, wiping her face. "I'm okay, sweetheart. Just thinking." He came out anyway, sat beside her. "I don't want to go anywhere else," he whispered. Ava pulled him close. "Me neither." That was the moment she realized this wasn't just about protection anymore. It wasn't just a good deed. She needed them as much as they needed her. And if that meant fighting the system, digging into their past, or risking heartbreak, so be it. Because real love wasn't always pretty or perfect, but it never gave up. Hope doesn't always arrive with fanfare. Sometimes it's a knock that comes gently instead of forcefully, a kind voice when you expect judgment, or a door that opens when you thought they were all closing. Just when Ava thought she was running out of time, someone stepped in not to take the boys away, but to help them stay. The next morning was colder than usual, the kind of cold that made windows groan and water pipes threaten to freeze. Ava moved through the kitchen on autopilot, pouring cereal the boys didn't ask for, setting out coats they hadn't touched. Every second felt like countdown, and then a knock on the door. Not loud, not rushed, just steady. Ava froze. The boys sat up from the couch, instantly tense. Jude grabbed Liam's hand. Ava walked to the door, her fingers trembling over the handle. When she opened it, she didn't see a CPS agent. She saw a woman in a burgundy wool coat, holding a leather folder. Her badge read Angela Ruiz, and beneath it, social worker, emergency placement advocate. "Ms. Morgan?" the woman asked, her voice warm but professional. Ava nodded. "I'm not here to take the boys," Angela added quickly, reading Ava's face. "I read the full report last night, and something didn't sit right." Ava's breath hitched. "What do you mean?" Angela stepped inside, gently closing the door behind her. She knelt down to the boys' level and smiled. "Hi, Jude." "Hi, Liam." "You're safe." "Okay." "I promise." Jude looked at Liam, unsure, but they didn't pull away. Angela straightened and turned to Ava. "There's more to this case than the notes say. These boys, they've slipped through cracks before. There are no missing person reports filed. No relatives stepping forward. It's like they were erased before they were ever noticed." Ava's hands trembled. "That's what scares me. They talk about someone, a man. I think he hurt their mom. They won't say more." Angela's expression softened. "I've seen stories like this. And I've seen foster care chew up kids like them." She glanced around the small apartment, modest but clean, cozy in its own way. The kind of home you didn't measure by square footage, but by warmth. "You're not legally their guardian," Angela continued, "but you're the first adult they've trusted enough to stay still with." Ava's eyes welled. "So what happens now?" Angela set the folder on the counter and opened it. "I pulled some strings. There's a process called kinship exception. We use it for urgent situations. I can recommend you as a temporary guardian while we investigate their past properly." "But I'm not family," Ava said quietly. Angela looked at the boys again. "You sure?" A long silence followed. Then Jude stood, walked over, and slipped his tiny hand into Ava's. "She's our mom now," he whispered. Angela smiled. "I'll file the papers tonight." For the first time in days, Ava exhaled. Not fully, but enough to let hope Indiana. They weren't safe yet, but they weren't alone anymore either. Sometimes, the most powerful promises aren't shouted. They're whispered between broken people trying to heal. As snow fell softly that night, Ava didn't just promise the boys a roof or a warm bed. She promised something no one ever had before. That no matter what came, she was theirs, and they were hers. The apartment was quiet again, but this time, not with fear. It was peace. Angela had left after finalizing the emergency kinship form, promising to fast-track everything she could. For now, Ava had the legal right to care for boys. And for the first time, Jude and Liam ate dinner without glancing toward the door. That night, Ava made hot cocoa with tiny marshmallows. The boys sat curled up under a blanket on the couch, while a movie flickered quietly on the screen. They didn't talk much, but they smiled more, laughed softly, relaxed. When bedtime came, they didn't resist. Ava tucked them in gently, smoothing Jude's hair and pulling Liam's blanket up to his chin. She started to stand, but Jude caught her hand. "Will you stay?" Ava sat down beside them, her voice low. "Of course." Liam stared at the ceiling. "You're not going to change your mind?" "No," she said without hesitation. "You won't send us back if someone comes looking?" Jude asked. His voice was barely a whisper. Ava looked between them. Two small boys who had learned to expect abandonment, who had waited their whole lives for someone to say you're enough, just as you are. She reached down and took both their hands. "I don't know what the future looks like," she said gently. "I don't know if someone will come with answers, or if more questions will appear. But I do know this. I'm not walking away. Ever." She paused. "I didn't plan for you. But now, I can't imagine my life without you." Tears welled in Liam's eyes. Not from fear this time, but from something deeper, something unfamiliar. Safety. "Can we call you Mom?" he asked, voice shaking. Ava's chest tightened. Her throat closed up. She nodded, eyes glistening. "I'd be honored." Jude reached up and wrapped his arms around her neck. Liam followed, and in that moment, tangled in a quiet embrace on a too-small mattress, Ava made a silent vow to herself. Whatever came next, legal battles, shadows from their past, sleepless nights, she would face it all. For them. Because families weren't made by blood. They were made by love and choice. And she had made hers. Joy doesn't always arrive with warning. Sometimes. It sneaks in through laughter you didn't expect to hear, a surprise waiting at the doorstep, or a feeling that, for the first time in forever, everything might just be okay. For Ava, Jude, and Liam, joy came wrapped in snowflakes and second chances. The first morning, they truly felt like a family didn't begin with a miracle. It began with pancakes, burnt ones. Ava had never been much of a cook, but that morning she wanted to try. She wanted to celebrate something, even if it was just a silent celebration of staying together one more day. She flipped the first pancake too late. It came out crispy and slightly smoking. But before she could mutter an apology, Liam let out a surprised giggle. "You made a cookie pancake," he said. Jude added, "It looks like a flying saucer." Ava laughed, for real this time, and tossed the pancake onto a plate with exaggerated flair. "Well, in that case, it's a breakfast adventure." They ate together in their pajamas. Syrup everywhere, mismatched plates, sticky fingers, and more laughter than words. And just when Ava thought the morning couldn't get better, there was a knock at the door. She froze for a second, heart skipping. But it was just Angela, holding a paper bag, cheeks pink from the cold. "I brought something," she smiled. Inside the bag was a warm manila envelope and 2 small gift boxes. "I pulled a few favors," she explained as she sat at the table. "The boy's mother, her name was Isabel Grady. She died in an unregistered apartment fire 3 months ago. The man they were running from, her boyfriend, he disappeared after the blaze. No legal custody documents. No will. But this," she tapped the envelope gently, "this proves Ava's guardianship is the safest option. You're not just temporary anymore." Ava blinked. "You mean?" Angela smiled. "You're officially their foster mother now, with a pathway to full adoption." Jude looked up. "We don't have to leave?" Liam clutched Ava's arm. "Ever?" Ava could barely speak through the tears. She nodded, pulling them both into her arms. Angela slid the gift boxes forward. "Found these in the shelter archive box with Isabel's name on them. No tags, but I think she meant for them to be opened someday." The boys opened them together. Inside each was a small wooden charm necklace, carved by hand. One said J with a tiny star, the other L with a tiny moon. The boys stared, speechless. "She loved you," Ava whispered. "She tried to protect you the best she could." That afternoon, snow began to fall again, but this time it didn't feel cold. They bundled up, went outside, and built the ugliest, most wonderful snowman anyone had ever seen. Jude put the pancake on its head. Liam gave a mustache with cocoa powder. Ava laughed so hard she fell backwards into the snow. And for a few shining hours, they weren't survivors. They were just a family. Every family faces trials, not to break them, but to reveal their strength. When old shadows return, court dates approach, and whispers from the past echo louder than before, the question isn't whether they'll face the storm, it's whether they'll face it together. And Ava is about to find out just how deep love can really go. Weeks passed. Life settled into something real, not perfect, but beautifully normal. There were school runs, homework battles, bedtime stories, and burnt dinners. The boys laughed more. Ava smiled easier. There were days it felt like the worst had passed. But trauma doesn't leave quietly. Jude began waking up in the middle of the night, silent, eyes wide, clutching his charm necklace, so hard it would left marks on his palm. Liam flinched when strangers walked too close behind him in public. Sometimes they spoke in half-sentences and unfinished thoughts, still afraid full truths might take something away. Ava didn't push. She held them tighter. And every time they doubted their place, she reminded them, "You are not temporary." Then came the letter, delivered by hand, stamped with a court seal, notice of custody petition, filed by Marcus Dane, Isabel Grady's former boyfriend, the man the boys had run from. Somehow he had resurfaced, claiming he was their next of kin, that he wanted custody. Angela came over that night with her hair in a bun and papers spread across Ava's kitchen table. "We're not going to let this happen," she said firmly. "But we'll need everything: photos, school reports, medical checkups, character references. They'll want to see a stable home, a safe environment, and most of all, emotional bonding." Ava looked at the boys asleep on the couch. their heads resting against each other, a blanket covering them both. "They're my sons," she whispered. "They're not going back." Angela nodded. "Then we'll fight like hell to make sure of it." The weeks leading to the hearing were a blur. Home inspections, counseling sessions, a formal psychological assessment of the boys. Ava took time off work. She poured herself into the process. Every paper signed, every answer practiced. But fear lingered because Marcus was coming. And he wasn't coming alone. He had a lawyer, a case built on past relationship and blood rights. No criminal record, no current charges, no proof of harm. Just history Ava couldn't fully name, and trauma the boys couldn't fully voice. The night before the court date, Ava lay awake staring at the ceiling. Jude came in first, wordless, curling beside her like he used to. Liam followed, dragging his blanket. And in the dark, Jude finally spoke. I remember him yelling. He said quietly. Mom would hold the door shut when he got mad. Liam added, "She told us to hide in the closet." Ava turned on the lamp, her throat tight. "You don't have to remember it all now," she said gently. "But tomorrow, if they ask, you tell the truth, whatever you can. You don't owe anyone silence." Liam nodded. "Even if he's family?" Ava took his hand. "No, especially if he is." Because family wasn't about blood. It was about love that shows up again and again, even when tested. And in the morning, they would face that test. Together, a courtroom could be a place of fear or rebirth. And when the truth is finally spoken, not just from legal papers, but from trembling voices and tear-filled eyes, even the coldest judge can see what love really looks like. For Ava, Jude, and Liam, this wasn't just a fight to stay together. It was a chance to finally be whole. The courthouse steps felt taller than they should have. Ava held one boy's hand in each of hers. All three dressed in their best. Pressed collars, polished shoes, and matching nervous hearts. Angela met them at the top, her smile steady and calm. "You ready?" she asked. Ava took a deep breath. "As I'll ever be." They entered a small courtroom, all gray carpet and solemn faces. The judge, a sharp-eyed woman named Honorable Dana Carlisle, adjusted her glasses as the case was called. Marcus Dane sat across from them, clean-shaven, suit-pressed. He didn't look like a monster. He looked like a man who knew how to play the system. His lawyer opened first, speaking of blood ties, biological rights, loss of custody due to confusion, and a father's right to reclaim his family. Ava sat frozen, her stomach in knots. Then it was Angela's turn. She didn't speak of rights. She spoke of safety, of how the boys have been found, cold, silent, afraid to speak, of the psychological reports, of the quiet nights where Ava sat by their beds through nightmares, of Liam's first laugh, Jude's first whispered, "Mom." She handed over artwork the boys had made. Crayon drawings of a small apartment, a burnt pancake, and a woman with long brown hair holding two stick figures. "She's our real mom," Liam had written under it in crooked letters. The judge reviewed it silently. Then she looked down from the bench. "Do the children wish to speak?" The courtroom went still. Angela looked at Ava, and Ava nodded. Both boys walked up slowly, holding hands. Liam stood in front of the microphone, too small to reach it properly, so the bailiff gently lowered it. He took a deep breath. "He made Mommy cry a lot," Liam said, "and we were scared all the time." Jude added, "But Ava makes us pancakes, even when she burns them." A soft chuckle rippled through the courtroom. Jude looked up at the judge, his voice cracking. "She never yells. She waits when we're scared. She lets us sleep by her bed when we have bad dreams." Then came the words Ava would never forget. "She makes us feel like we matter." Silence. The judge blinked slowly, then glanced at Marcus, who sat rigid, stone-faced. After a long pause, Judge Carlisle spoke. "Legal guardianship will remain with Ava Morgan. A full adoption review will be scheduled in 60 days. Effective immediately, Mr. Dane has no custodial rights." Ava couldn't breathe. Then Jude turned and ran to her. Liam followed, and in that moment, 3 hearts that had wandered through separate storms came home. Outside the courthouse, The sky broke open with sunshine for the first time in weeks. Angela handed Ava the official document and whispered, "Welcome to the beginning." Ava knelt, arms around the boys, holding them like she never wanted to let go. "Let's go home," she smiled. And this time, it really was love, when true, asks everything. It demands strength when you're weak, courage when you're afraid, and sometimes the hardest thing of all, letting go. Just when Ava thought the worst was behind them, danger returned, and the only way to protect her boys was to risk losing them. The days after the court ruling were golden. The boys returned to school with new backpacks. Ava framed their court drawing and hung it in the kitchen. She even began the paperwork for official adoption, choosing new middle names that matched the stars and the moon from their necklaces. For the first time in months, they were truly living, until a letter arrived. Unmarked envelope. No return address. Inside was a single photo. Grainy, taken from a distance. It showed Ava walking Jude and Liam home from school. On the back, written in harsh ink, "You can't hide forever." Ava's hands trembled. The boys were playing with blocks on the carpet, unaware. She quickly tucked the photo away. That night, she barely slept. The next day, she noticed a dark car parked across the street. The day after that, the same car followed them for 4 blocks before turning off. Angela came over immediately. "This wasn't part of the custody hearing," she said, pacing Ava's living room. "Marcus isn't finished. He's trying to scare you." "He already is," Ava said. "I don't care about me, but I won't risk the boys getting hurt again." Angela hesitated. "There's one option." She slid a packet across the table. "Emergency relocation program. New name, new city, new life. But I'll lose everything," Ava whispered. "My job, my sister, this home." Angela nodded. "And they'll lose their school, their friends, stability, but they'll be safe." Ava's throat tightened. That night, she sat the boys down and told them the truth. Not everything, but enough. "That man, he's still looking for you. And I need to make sure he never finds you again." Liam looked terrified. "We have to run?" Ava shook her head. "We're not running. We're starting over. Together." Jude stayed quiet for a long time. Then he asked, "Will we still be a family?" Ava pulled both of them into her arms. No one could ever take that away. Within 3 days, she closed the apartment, packed up only essentials, and burned the threatening photo. They boarded a train under different names, headed for a state neither of them had heard of. As the train pulled away, Ava looked out the city they were leaving behind. The kitchen where they'd laughed, the couch where they'd cuddled, the courthouse where they'd finally won. She was giving it all up. But as Liam leaned his head against her shoulder and Jude held her hand tightly, she realized she hadn't lost anything that mattered. She still had them. They still had her. That was everything. Some stories don't end with fanfare. They end with stillness, the kind that wraps around your heart like a warm quilt on a cold morning. For Ava, Jude, and Liam, home wasn't placed on a map. It was a feeling, and after everything they'd lost, they finally found what they were really searching for: peace. The town was quiet, tucked between hills and pines, where fog clung to the early morning and children rode bikes without looking over their shoulders. Their new house wasn't big, but it had something Ava hadn't felt in years: stillness. She painted the boys' room sky blue, let them pick out curtains with spaceships and stars, put their charm necklaces in a shadow box above their shared bed, framed like sacred artifacts. They were still jumpy at loud noises, still sometimes checked locks twice. But they laughed now, full belly laughs, over cartoons and bad knock-knock jokes. Ava got a job at the local clinic. Angela helped from a distance, working through court systems behind the scenes to make the adoption official in their new state. It took months. But then, one spring afternoon, an envelope arrived by courier. It was thick with the court seal. Ava opened it with trembling fingers. Final adoption approved. Ava Morgan, legal parent of Jude and Liam Grady Morgan. She didn't cry at first. She just sat there, staring, heart pounding, hands shaking. Then Jude came running in with dirt on his jeans and a flower. he had picked from the backyard. "Look what I found." And she pulled him into her lap and just whispered, "You're mine. You're really mine." He didn't understand why she was crying, but he held her tight anyway. That night they baked a cake. Badly. Liam cracked 2 eggs onto the floor, and Jude used salt instead of sugar. It didn't matter. They ate every bite. The next weekend, Ava brought them to the hill above the house. The grass was soft and wildflowers dotted the slope. She pulled a tiny metal tin from her bag. Inside, the last ashes of the burnt photo, the one Marcus had sent. She let the boys pour them into the wind. "It's gone," she said gently. "He doesn't get to follow us anymore." Jude watched the wind carry it all away. Liam smiled and leaned into her. "What now?" Ava looked out across the field, the sky wide and open before them. "Now," she said. "Now we build forever." And they did. It didn't look perfect. There were therapy sessions, school conferences, bad dreams, and learning to trust that good things could stay. But over time, the pain turned to memory. The fear turned into strength. And 3 broken pieces became one unbreakable whole. Years later, when people asked how they became a family, Ava would just smile and say, "It started with a whisper at a bus stop and ended with everything we ever needed." Because in the end, it wasn't about where they'd been. It was about where they were now. Together, at peace. Home,